Hey everyone, welcome to this video on how to fill out a worship report. I figured since I'm asking you to do these, it would be a good idea if I also explain how I want you to do these. So I have a worship report right here, and I'm going to fill it out and show you how I'd like you to do it. And so I'm also playing around with this new stream sharing thing called StreamYard. And so I'm going to kind of use that today to help show you what this looks like. So with this, I can flip over to another camera and you can see what I'm doing here. All right. So here's what's at the top: the name, the date, and the report number. Okay. So Jacob Miller. And I'm going to be filling this out for September 6th. That's the bulletin that I picked up in front of me. And now, I don't know what report number this is for me. When I turn it in and get it back, that will have the report number, and that will let me know how far along I am. We need to do 15 of these. That's a little bit less than last year. Last year, I was asking you to do 20, and so I decided to back off on that a little bit and make that 15. Okay, so there's the first line for us. Now, the next line says Sunday of the church year and color for the season. So I can find that information out in, well, the best place to find that information out is in the bulletin. So here's the bulletin from that Sunday. And if I open up the bulletin, which is the same whether you're doing it online or if you are here in church with us that morning. The bulletins are always up there on the website that you should be able to find. And here I can see right under the line that says Holy Cross Lutheran Church, there it says the 14th Sunday after Pentecost, and there it is, September 6th, 2020. So that's what I'm going to write here in the Sunday of the church year, 14th Sunday after Pentecost. All right. Now the color for the season. This one you can find again two places. The easiest place to find it is just simply to look up at the front of the church, and this is what you're doing whether you are watching online or there in person, and look at the colors that are there. This is going to be the color that's on the pulpit, on the altar, on the lectern, and it's also going to be the color of my stole. The other place where you can find that is here on the back, and you see we've got this symbol that, well, it's a dove. So it's a symbol for Pentecost. And so the Sundays after Pentecost are green. And that's why that dove there, that box is green. So 14 Sundays after Pentecost, that's where we are. The color for this Sunday then is green. Now, the next line says to list the 3 readings for the day. And here again, this is information that you can find in the bulletin even before the service starts. So here on, this is about the 3rd page of the bulletin. We've got it. The Old Testament reading is Ezekiel 33, 7-9, Romans 13, 1-10, and then over here, the gospel reading is Matthew 18, verses 1-20. Usually, if you're in church, you can also find this on the back of the bulletin. And there those same 3 readings are again. If you're listening as the lector and I read out the readings, you'll find those there. So let's write those in on our worship report also. Okay, so Ezekiel 33, 7-9, Romans 13, 1-10, Matthew 18, verses 1-20. All right, very good. So now I ask the next question, and that is to give one thing that stuck out to you from the readings today. So let's take a look at a little bit of this reading from Romans chapter 13. Now I'm going to take it off of the camera for a second. Well, let's just read from the end of it. Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves has fulfilled the law. The commandments: you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So you could say that love is the way, the way we do what God wants. That's something that we learned there. And it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can just be one sentence or even less than that. Okay. So the next one asks you to do kind of the same thing from one of the hymns that we sing. Now, on a non-communion Sunday, we're singing 3 or 4 hymns. And on a communion Sunday, we're usually singing about 6 hymns. So you've got some variety to choose from. And I always try and choose 1 or 2 hymns that are a little bit more familiar. And so hopefully they become familiar to you too. I'm going to go with the opening hymn from this Sunday. That was the hymn, God's Own Child, I Gladly Say It. And so here it is. Well, let's just read verse 1. God's own child, I gladly say it, I am baptized into Christ. He, because I could not pay it, paid my full redemption price. Do I need earth's treasures many? I have one worth more than any. That brought me salvation free, lasting to eternity. So if I like that line from the hymn, I can just say, I'm God's child, and I have the free gift of salvation. I always get ahead of myself when I write. All right. So that's that line. Now, you notice that everything we've done up until this point are things that are found in the bulletin and that you can kind of do, if you get to church a couple minutes early, you can do before that, or you can come back to it after the service and fill that in. The part that we really need to be paying attention for is the part about the sermon here. And so here's what I've got here. Okay. Give 3 points from the sermon. Circle the correct word if the point was law or gospel. Make sure you listen for the gospel and make it one of your points. So here's what that means. Okay. Now, sometimes sermons wind up being in 3 points, 3 big points. You don't need to worry about what those 3 big points are. Just tell me 3 things that stuck out to you as you were listening. And I consider this actually to be very important because it's feedback for me as the pastor, as the one who's preaching the sermon. Most of the feedback that I get on sermons and, what were people listening to? What were people hearing? What made sense to people comes from these worship reports. And so I'm actually asking you guys to do a very important job for me of helping me to understand whether or not I'm making sense as the pastor. That's kind of important because if I'm not making sense, then the good news of Jesus isn't making sense to people. And that's what gives us life. And so we want to make sure that. So I'm asking you guys to help me out and to help us all out as the congregation here in doing this because this is some of the best feedback that I get. Okay. So now, all right, this is going to be a stretch for me because the sermon I preached on that Sunday, September 6th, was about 8 days ago. So I'm going to try and remember what I was saying about this and write down some points from there. So the gospel reading was from Matthew 18. And I'm just going to kind of read a little bit of this and remember a couple of the points that I made from that. Okay. Now, as we're going through these points, we're trying to remember if these points are law and gospel, but let's just pick out what the points are first. So, for example, we have these words from Jesus where he says, woe to the world for temptation to sin, for it is necessary that temptations come, but woe to the one by whom the temptation comes. If your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than with 2 hands or 2 feet to be thrown into the eternal fire. Okay. So what Jesus is talking about there is things that cause us to sin. So temptations. as he says in that verse at the beginning. So one of the points that I made from this was that we should get rid of anything that is causing us to sin. Anything all right. So that was one point. Jesus goes on and he tells the parable of the lost sheep. Here's what it says. What do you think if a man has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray? Does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and go in search of the one that went astray? If he finds it, I say to you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. So this is really good news because we know that Jesus is our good shepherd who goes and finds sheep that are lost, people who are straying. Okay, so let's write that. Jesus is our good shepherd who finds lost sheep. Okay, very good. Now, the last part of this reading talks about if your brother or, well, your sister too, if anybody sins against you. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault just between the two, you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. Okay? So, Jesus wants us to be restored to other people. That's the point. Well, let's say forgive other people. All right. So we got our 3 points now here. That wasn't too hard. Shouldn't be too hard to listen for those. Now, here's the question. Are they law or gospel? And here's where we get the note in the instruction that gives us kind of a little bit of a summary to remind you what that is. So it says here, remember that the law is what God commands us to do, and the gospel is what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. Okay, so let's look at our points. We should get rid of anything that's causing us to sin. All right? Is that telling us about what God commands us to do or what God has done for us in Jesus? Well, that pretty clearly is telling us about something that God is commanding us to do. So that's law. Okay? Now, the next one, Jesus is our good shepherd who finds lost sheep. That's talking about what God does for us in Jesus Christ. That's gospel. Remember, gospel means good news. And that's certainly good news that Jesus goes and finds us when we are the lost sheep. Okay. And then the last one here, Jesus wants us to forgive other people. Right. Now, this is, since it talks about Jesus, you would think, okay, well, that's gospel. And it is something that comes kind of out of the gospel because we know that since God forgives us, we should forgive other people. But here, this is the command to forgive other people and be restored to other people. That's a commandment still. And so that's law. Right? Now, let's remember that it's not that like the law is bad and the gospel is good. Both the law and the gospel are good, and they're good for us. It's just that it doesn't feel very comfortable to have that law pointed out. But it is so wonderful to know what God has done for us in Jesus. That, yeah, Jesus died for you. Jesus rose again from the dead for you. And that because of that, you have everlasting life. So that's the gospel, that Jesus died for us, that he rose again for us, and that we have forgiveness, we have everlasting life. Yeah. And so hopefully you've remembered that from when we've talked about this in confirmation or when you've learned about it in religion class at one of our Lutheran schools too. All right. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for with this question is to see you apply what you've learned in class, whether it's my class on a Sunday night or the confirmation class that you have at your school. Let's see if you're able to apply this. I mean, really, to be honest, before questioning, this is one of the few opportunities that I really get for everybody to see, how you're thinking about this. Is this making sense to you? Are you growing in your faith in this way and understanding what our church teaches. So it's kind of important in that way. And most of you, you guys just do really great at this, and you get it. And if not, if you turn one that's all wrong, it still counts. I'm not going to make it so that you got to do another one or something like that. But I'll probably write in a little bit of an explanation about what's really going on there. Okay. And that's helpful for me too, because that means that if maybe I wasn't explaining it well, and so maybe next time I need to do a little bit better in my work of explaining things in the sermon. Okay, so it's very helpful. Now, here is the last two parts of it. So the next one says, talk about something from the service with whoever brought you to church today, and give an example of something that you learned or you didn't understand. So this is different from what I've asked before. Now I'm asking you to talk to your parents or your grandparents or your friends or your aunts and uncles, whoever brought you to church, talk about something from the worship service that day. So let's see if I can remember what we talked about when we came home, because my wife Julia and we did talk about this a little bit. And so we talked about how it's important to remember that Jesus finds us. Okay, so it could be something that simple. Okay. Now it says, please write any comments, any questions, any hymn suggestions, or jokes here. That's the very last thing on the worship reports. And I've gotten some good jokes. I've gotten some corny jokes. I've gotten some things that are, they've been good. But this is where I invite you guys to do something too, to ask me some questions, or to give us some comments, or let me know even if you're struggling with this too. If you are struggling with this, if this is kind of a hard thing for you, then I want to know. I want to know if this is something that's hard, because there are other things that we can do besides this, things we can do to make this easier for you too. So I hope this is helpful for you in seeing how this goes, because I want this to be something that isn't too hard for you, and something that doesn't become just like a burden that you've got to do. Because the reason why God asks us to come and be in church is to receive His gifts, and to receive what He has to offer us, to hear His word, and to know and believe what He is teaching for us here. And then we respond with our prayers, with our praise to Him. So again, hope this was helpful, and God bless you as you work through this. If you have any questions or any issues with this, please send me an email or give me a call. Thank you.